And then speaking of irritating, EA is at it again. Now, this is the story that I saw recently that I just saw really funny, but this also goes into line with Madden 21. But let's start with this. So as soon as reviews came out and really kind of settled, like all the mainstream outlets like IGN, GameSpot, all them, they put out their reviews and did really positive reviews. All of a sudden, wouldn't you know it, all these in-game ads suddenly come in to the game. And they're not even just like small ads, on the bottom at the menu. No, they're during the game. Isn't that interesting that they wait until all the reviews are done to suddenly throw that in? Isn't it so interesting how they have just a switch they can turn on for that? Isn't that interesting? It doesn't seem like, EA is one of those companies that, tries to, milk what they can out of things and be very dishonest with the customer and things of that nature. No, EA's never done that. I haven't boycotted them for almost 2 years now because of that. I haven't bought a single game under EA's banner since the Star Wars Battlefront 2. Or was it Star Wars Battlefront? No, it was Star Wars Battlefront 2 thing. The DLC issues. And I've been okay with that. I mean, obviously, BioWare hasn't been making good games, going back to what I said earlier in the stream. They haven't been doing that for a while, so that was pretty easy. Otherwise, I haven't had any reason to buy anything from it. It's been pretty easy, actually. I should be pretty clear in saying it hasn't been that hard to buy EA games, because generally speaking, it means I don't buy sports games and I don't buy Battlefield. That's usually what I have to do, and that's pretty easy to do these days. But it doesn't change the fact that this company continues to be one of the most horrible and dishonest game publishers out there. And that also comes into play with Madden 21, when once again, a lot of people are freaking out because the game is clearly copy and pasted. I was trying to find them. Angry Joe did a video about it where he screamed about it for about an hour and showed different things about it. And he has a couple clips in that video, so go check out his video on it to see those clips. I can't seem to find them, like, just Google searching them. But there are two things that were very notable. One of them is that last year with Madden 20, you could see in the strip banners and the stands, like, how some stands, like, in each tier, in each, like, deck, they have the little LED things where they do, like, advertisements and stuff. Well, they neglected to change the copy and paste of it, and Madden 19 was still on some of these banners in Madden 20. Well, the same happened in Madden 21. I believe it was something on the practice fields, I think, where one of these little, I don't know what you call them, but they were these like almost like a crash, like one of those things you see in like paintball outdoor things, like those weird like triangle shaped things. And it was like where the water cooler is in the practice field. And again, it says Madden 20 on it, not Madden 21. And there was another, I think it was a tweet, where a guy compares 4 straight games of Madden and how the championship animations for winning the Super Bowl are basically all the same. They just change the order in which these shots appear. And that's really, 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 really fucking stupid. And the fact that people will constantly accept that. And I know why that is because, well, quite frankly, sports gamers, the core of them, don't surf the internet and look at the same kind of videos and the same kind of content as traditionally hardcore gamers do, because hardcore gamers are looking at the full spectrum of games, where sports gamers, they don't really give a shit because all they do is play Madden or FIFA or whatever, right? Like, that's all they're into. All they care is they get their new game and they get the roster update. They don't really care about what else happens in there. And I don't understand why that is, because, you figured you wouldn't want to spend $70 for a game and then also spend a shit ton of money on top of that in these digital cards with the Ultimate Team stuff or Diamond Dynasty and MLB The Show. You'd figured that those people would be like, hey, I paid for this game. Why am I suddenly paying all this for digital trading cards that have no value to them? I can't sell these. So why am I spending money on it? But people fall for that trap because it's such an easily addictive scenario. And that's why we keep asking that these things get regulated in the same way that gambling does, because that's essentially what they are. The only difference is that it's even worse than gambling, because at least if you gamble and you win something, it's got value to it. If you win something in a slot machine, it's something, it's value. If you win a game of poker, you get some chips, like there's value to those chips. if you win, let's say, because MLB The Show was my big thing for the last 2 years. I haven't bought the new one because I don't want to support that shit. You know, a Mike Trout card in MLB 19, I remember looking this up, was worth about 120,000 stubs, which is their currency. And if I remember correctly, the actual real world currency that would require to get that many stubs was like $100. So because I have this card, which I got through using the market, I got all of them without paying a cent. I finished the entire active the live rosters, like the people that were actually playing at the time. I maxed all of them out just by doing the market, and it took work. Yeah, it took a lot of work. But again, it's better than spending $60 on top of the $60, $70 already paid. Or I guess $100 just to get Trout. It's stupid. And I don't understand why people, well, I really, when I say I don't understand, it's like I can't fathom how that many people are that stupid to not notice it or even care. I know why, because they just don't care. They all they want to do is play their sports games. And I've seen a lot of excuses from people. Like I've seen dads go around, for example, and be like, well, I don't have a lot of time to play these things. So I want to be able to get all these things, so that's why I have to spend money. To which I ask the question, why not just not play that game or even play that mode? Like, why not? Here's an idea. Why not just play the Be a Pro like version of it? Why not just play franchise? Why not just play season mode or GM mode? Why do you have to play Ultimate Team? If you want an all-star team so bad, go into franchise mode, turn on fantasy draft, and you can just have whatever team you want. Ultimate Team is meant to get money out of you. That's all it is. It's not meant to be fun. You're just playing the same game, but you're spending money for it. You have to spend money for it. In my case, it took, I want to say, 4 to 6 months through playing the market every day to max out those rosters. That's how long it took me. It might have even taken longer than that. I can't remember. But the fact that it takes that much time, it's the same thing with Star Wars Battlefront 2, where somebody figured out how long it was going to take you to unlock Darth Vader if you did it fairly. They did it the right way. It was stupid the amount of time it would take. Ultimate Team is not meant to be a fun mode. It's meant to be a sucker mode. That's what it is. And I played it because it is kind of fun to collect these things, because that's like the inner like Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card guy in me. But I also recognize as a Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! Player that eventually there came a point where I was spending way too much money to justify what I was doing with it, because it's not like I was playing in tournaments. I wasn't selling any of these things off. I was just collecting them. And at one point, you got to just figure out that, hey, it seems kind of silly to, spend hundreds of dollars on something you're not going to sell. It only just has like minor value to you. It seems kind of silly. So with EA, with Madden, I'm not surprised that it's another copy and paste, because they know that they can do that with those games and no one's going to care. Now the rating on Metacritic for it, give me a second to pull that up, is actually what it should be. And I wish the review score would be even lower than that. But the actual reviews, the user review score, is just hilarious to me. It's under a 1, and it's going to keep staying like that because people are that upset about it. Now this doesn't do anything for the people that don't care. No one is looking on Metacritic that is a hardcore sports gamer that doesn't give a shit about this stuff. And the fact that it's still a 70 is really irritating. Like, what are people reviewing it at? Oh, there's barely any critic reviews. So what's the highest reviews here? So the only positive reviews, so it's probably Game Informer that's really taking it, because Game Informer's got weight. I don't know what any of these 3 places are, so I'm willing to bet they don't carry as much of the rating. But because Game Informer actually carries some value to it, it's probably kept it above a 70, because there's a lot of 60s here. And yeah, like none of the major places have shown it. Like IGN doesn't have one here. GameSpot doesn't have one here, because they know that they would get criticized like a son of a bitch if they gave that thing what they probably would give it, which is a 7.5 or an 8. Like IGN Spain, because again, the non-American ones, they're usually pretty honest, I find. And then this is the one time that I wish Polygon would actually put in a rating, just to be like, look, you got to do your part and make sure that people understand that this is something you don't buy. But yeah, I'm almost positive the Game Informer is what's keeping that above. But then the user reviews, 846 negative reviews and 25 positive. What do the positives say? Okay, let's see this one. I have no idea what everyone is talking about. The game is great unless you didn't like franchise last year. It's perfect. Superstar KO had many bugs. The art is so much fun. That's the key here. MUT got updated a bit. Doesn't say anything about it. The one key thing that everybody's mad about, and people have, see, I feel like this is a troll anyway. But I mean, let's assume that this is an honest review. Let's really assume that's an honest review. You know that these are people that are trying to just convince themselves that this is not what's happening. That this is people just hating on it. And they're trying to justify it. In the same vein that like we all the time as kids, especially back in the days of my childhood when you had Super Nintendo and games, you didn't get a lot of games because games were a lot more expensive back then. So when your parents got you something, even if it was a bad game, you try to tell yourself this is good and you try to play it all the time because you need to get the value out of it. People now are spending money on these games and they're trying to justify it because they can't admit to themselves that they just spent $60, $70, $80 plus microtransactions on a game that didn't give them anything. They gave them the same experience that they've gotten for the last, 10 years with like slight alterations. Like really? I've heard the yard mode is kind of cool, but again, there are microtransactions because there's all the friggin' cost, there's all the designs and stuff. So again, they're trying to get money out of you. There's no way around it. And people are falling prey to it. And because of that, they're trying to justify it. They're trying to defend it. And thankfully, this is one of those times, going back to the user reviews, that people aren't falling for it anymore. Either that or the people that would be making the positive reviews, they aren't paying attention to it. But the people that really give a shit about the industry. Now, again, I don't like the zero thing. I really do think that that's not a good way of looking at it. If you're really being honest, like realistically, this thing is like a 4 or 5. Like, be honest with it. I hate the zeros and the 10s when it comes to reviews. Like, take a look at what happened with Last of Us 2, with so many other very controversial things where it's just a cascade of zeros, 1s, and 10s, basically. That's pretty silly. I do think that's really dumb because that takes away. That's why I tell people all the time, don't really give a shit about what Metacritic says. The reason I'm just looking at it here is because at least it gives you a rough idea of what the mainstream outlets are saying. Like, the user reviews really don't mean much of anything. Unless, like, a game is actually, like, down-reviewed in mainstream media, and then it's the opposite, like, the review score is really high, then maybe you kind of look at that and be like, maybe the game's actually really good, and there's a reason why journalism outlets are being mad at it. Or if the user review score is really low, like in this case, and the review score would actually be really high, like if Madden was actually, like, rated at a 80, and the user review score is really low, then you could be like, okay, what's going on here? Now, you could still look at it and be like, okay, well, Last of Us 2 got really low user review scores because people were just bombing it because, you know, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, all that kind of shit. We all know that's the thing that happened with that game. But if, say, the user review score was like, say, around like a 5 or a 6, and the Metacritic score is at like 90, maybe there's something going on here. But because it was so low, like, you knew it was just being bombed. In this case, it is being bombed. But again, the review score is already so low. Like, 70 is pretty low for Metacritic, especially for a AAA game. That should be your sign to be like, okay, something's really wrong here. And unfortunately, sports gamers don't care because they're just a perpetual, endless cascade of suckers. And there's not a whole lot we can personally do. Like, we can talk about all we want. We really can talk about all we want, but until we finally get to sports gamers, and the only way that happens is if the mainstream media starts talking about it. And that's why we keep trying to push it. We keep trying to push the gambling stuff. Because as soon as it becomes that, one of two things have to happen. Either EA will ignore it and then the mainstream media will talk about it and then they'll have no choice, or because at least it's being enforced, they're forced to actually do something. And that's all we can really do. We just keep going back to the ESRB and just saying, hey guys, like, why isn't this being regulated for gambling? Just keep pushing that. That's the narrative we need to keep pushing along, and then maybe sometime down the road, we'll finally get things going the way that they should be.